So now we're back for session 58. In the last session, we talked about the state business, which basically most of us don't really care that much. Of course, we do care as a citizen. We have our duty to the nation, not to the state, but to the nation. We want to make sure this country is not really driven into sand by some irresponsible, reckless, let's just say naive or innocent, old baby. Yeah, but when it comes to the day of election, I'm sure most of us will be, doing the right thing, and I would too, to vote whoever, we think is right. So anyway, in this session, I want to, give two examples, and hopefully that would make sense for you. So professionally, I have been doing, so-called upstream sector project inbound material logistic operation management for the oil and gas and chemical industry, right? So in this profession, the planning is the logistic, pretty much, right? So of course, I don't want to get too much into the details because a lot of you guys probably don't really care about this. But the whole point is, I have, be the major contributor to a new system. Basically, it's all about planning, everything down to every single intimate details. Plan out everything and and anything. And to the point, one time I mentioned before that, I was in Vietnam and I watched a Chinese petrochemical company, landing a huge chemical processing vessel, from I guess the beach, sand beach, and then just with a couple of steel plate on the beach, and then just push them over directly to the site. For me, that was really eye-opening experience. Like, wow, what a cowboy operation! In a million years, I would never dare to do something like that. But hey, they did pretty well. So at that point, when I look at it, I was like so dismissive about this. They're like, Jesus Christ, I would never want to work for a company like that, because that's totally against everything. I guess professionally, I believe. And so I always on all the projects I participated in, I always plan down to every single teeny tiny details. I would never let any, I guess, stone, untouched. Now, but then it comes to another, brand new experience. About 18 months ago, I moved to a new place, and the reason I acquired this space was because I have a little bigger land space than otherwise normally we could in Houston. And of course, provided it's a very tight budget too. So the reason I wanted this space was because I want to build a Chinese tea garden. That has been my dream. And I really want to do, something that is completely, what I like, right? Since I was very little, I guess I never got to see it, but I heard my grandfather design all the houses he built. And he was in the chain hotel business. He built lots of houses. He designed all of them, right? Obviously, born and raised in a communist country, I never had a chance to design any of my own private personal property. At least in my times, nobody were really purchasing any real estate property. That was in the radical communist state back then. So, all right. So here I am in America, and eventually, finally, I got a piece of land. Not big, very tiny, right? At least compared to my grandfather. He had like a 6,000 fruit trees, on the property of just one secondary residence in the countryside. what I have was 60 trees. So you can't compare. But still, hey, you work with what you have, right? So I was so excited. I wanted to design this place. So before, long before, the contract was signed, I already designed every day. I took like several hours, on the paper, design this and that. And after I designed, I took my design and came to the, property. And this was before, the contract was signed. And when I left, all that design just, scratched. It was good for nothing. So about 2 months later, I finally, have the contract signed and moved in. And now I actually own the land, which was basically nothing, flat, plain. And now I can play with it. So I started, and then I decided, you know what? I cannot really design this thing. Why? A lot of reasons. The first one would be, I have absolutely no idea exactly where is which of the 60 trees, which, by the way, I cut about 10 of them. Some, already rotten. Others were, basically they were in the way. I would hate to cut any trees, but, you have to do what you have to do. So I was down to 50, right? So how do I use this 50 some trees and build my koi ponds? For those of you who have kois, they need some kind of shades. Otherwise, all this heat in Texas, they would jump out of the water and die. And I had that experience in the past 20 some years. So I'm glad I have the trees. So try to build a fish pond in between the trees. That is something I've never done before. So I do not have the expertise, the experience, the knowledge, nada. Absolutely nothing, right? So I have to learn. I have to climb my learning curve. That's one thing that I didn't know. And the other thing was what kind of plants to select, right? To be, planting here and there. It has to be some low maintenance, right? And then, even more importantly, because this is a Chinese garden, so the whole layout has to go with the feng shui, which by itself is quite a profession, And I was never in this profession, so I studied as hard as I could to determine where exactly is the location for what. For instance, you can't just randomly decide, there is the little fake, hill or mountain, and there is the pool of water. No, everything has to be exactly where, and there is a very complicated set of, very strict rules about all this. And then you got to, cover all the 5 elements, right? So the earth, fire, water, metal, wood. Okay? But each one of the 5, they have to be, remaining in balance. And they actually have to be at a certain part, certain direction. And then, now that we know that, and also in each and every direction, for instance, on the east side is supposed to be the green dragon. On the west side is supposed to be white tiger. So you cannot have anything that is active on the tiger side, which is basically like, your kitchen area cannot be on the tiger side, right? Your driveway cannot be on the the driveway has to be on the dragon side, cannot be on the tiger side. So there are a lot of things like that, right? And so because I was born in certain year, and then that dictate, I cannot have too much in the element of earth exposed. So with all that, basically in this, that pretty much, give you a lot of constraints in your design. So before you actually get to the part that you actually think about aesthetic value, it is actually, you have to consider where to put what and why. instead of what to put where, it's what not to put where and why. So you got to know that, right? So, okay. So that's quite a learning curve. And so what I decided, I'm not going to try to finish the whole project, in a short period of time. I'm going to drag it. Why? Because basically I will learn, on the fly. I learn by, trying it out, and I meant them, where I made mistakes. So basically I started with the front yard and worked my way back. So 18 months later, I'm now almost finishing the backyard. And of course, in the process, what I learned was, hey, this is where the adaptive really pays off, because just about everything, anything that when I started this, I had very little knowledge, let alone, no expertise whatsoever. But now I learned by adaptive, and how, let me just give you one example. When I did my gazebo, right? So the floor, there are two ways of doing it. One is, strictly engineering, the standardized, right? Perfectly, leveled. And then, so the floor. And the way I did, first of all, I have to have the wood elements. So I have the wood beams there, right? In 4 sides. And then I realized, after the weathering is done, all these wood beams, they're going to be crooked. They're not going to be perfect straight line. So what that does to you is, if you have the perfect, cement, well leveled, and this, on this base, you put the wood beam on top of it, which is crooked. So when this crooked stuff is there to show, it ain't gonna look very pretty for you. So what are you gonna do about that? Now I decide, I'm gonna go with natural. I actually play the theme of imperfection. So not just that wood beam goes, crooked. I actually have all the little rocks, laying on the floor on top of the, sand, other mixtures. And then I put the cement bricks in there. Everything almost intentionally, a little bit, imperfect here and there. So now it's all consistently imperfect. Now it's artistic, right? I actually love myself for that, because otherwise I would find myself struggling trying to make things, perfect and almost technically impossible. So now I'm like, hey, I never planned any of this. So basically throughout the whole project, the only thing I got about, the whole thing, except for digging the koi pond, that part I hired a machine. Everything else, just, with my hands, by myself, single-handedly, did the whole yard from the front to the back. And throughout the whole process, basically, I just never planned. Just, basically look at where, I am, and let's see, what do we do? Going from here, adapt. And then next step, going from there, adapt. Okay? Everything just going with one philosophy. Imperfection and natural. Beautifully imperfect. Artistically natural. That becomes my philosophy of this design. Does it work? I think it does. Why? Because, like I mentioned before, the Chinese tea garden, even if, let's say, it's high maintenance, it's going to have to look like zero maintenance. You cannot really trim things, prune things, like the Japanese or English garden, look in this artificial shape. No, you can't. They have to look like, oh, they have always been there like that. Just, like I mentioned, the best, makeup for a woman is probably look like no makeup. And then in the photography, the best lighting is like all natural, right? So the same way for the Chinese garden, it has to look natural. So my imperfection actually paid off. It looks really natural. There is zero planning. And then I thought about it. Wait, professionally, I always have to be, you know, I'm a perfectionist, professionally speaking. Um, so how did I arrive at this when I'm doing my own personal project in my yard, doing the landscape stuff? I guess one, exactly because I'm working all by myself. There is no process of establishing the consensus, and there is no need for SOP, because hey, I don't need other people to synchronize their actions with me. And right or wrong, or fast or slow, I accumulate my intuitively my knowledge as things go, and make a I guess amendment, adjustment, um, and it works out perfectly. But imagine if I have 3, 5, 10, 12 guys working with me. Can I afford doing all this? Absolutely not, because it's gonna be a chaos. So the big condition of this is I'm working by myself. I don't need any consensus. I don't need synchronized actions. I don't need project management and make sure everybody's working in alignment, at the same pace. There's none of that. For me, it's like a couple of hours every day. It has been 18 months, right? For me, that becomes some physical exercise, because from what I understand, it's better than going to the gym, because basically you are coordinating your whole body, everywhere is working. Yeah, at the beginning, it was like, oh my God, it's killing my back or my arm. But hey, I get really better in that. And thanks to good old communists, for their re-education program when I was little, I learned how to, work with shovels and all that. So I don't really consider myself a handyman, but I did a pretty good job. So anyway, I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. This is the perfect example of, I guess, prevailing a good result with inaction. Now, that's the key word, inaction. What is inaction? I sweat a lot. You tell me that's inaction? No. Meaning, I never even try to force any action. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. All I need to do is to identify how would it work. For instance, here's something, right? A conflicting, elements. The trees. When you dig between the trees, when you get too close to the tree will die, right? So you cannot. And when you have this, coil pond between the trees, the roots of the trees, they absorb the water really, really fast. And so your water goes down fast. So if you are a somewhat, kind of a conservation conscious person, and we do know in Texas water has to be, you can't waste water. So that's something you have to think about, the good balance, the trade-off and all that. And then, basically a lot of things, a lot of elements, try to play in balance. So work with a whole bunch of rules, starting with the feng shui rules, which pretty much eliminated lots of options. Why do you think it took me 18 months? Oh, no, I take it back, probably 24 months, shopping around Houston for specifically a piece of property. I saw this one within 1 week, after it came to the market, I jumped and secured. But all this time before I saw this specific one, the reason I couldn't, decide on any of those that I saw was because it was all against the feng shui rules. Either this part or that part. And feng shui has a very, very, big book. And there's a lot to, to follow, right? So eventually I found this one. Pretty much everything, the basic rules, all, checked out, perfectly. In fact, they had never had any idea. So when I said, oh, this is very good for feng shui, they're like, really? Wow. They were surprised themselves. So anyway, when I did all this, for my own yard, back to the point, it was inaction that prevailed was the result. And the so-called inaction in the Taoist term is you don't do nothing that is not adaptive. So inaction refers to no actions that is forced upon against the going trend. So does that make sense? I'm going to spend a couple of more sessions on this until we are, because this is very, very important, the basic, the fundamental concept of Taoism teaching. Regardless, it's either state administrative business or the corporate, business or our personal life. It's all the same. Basically, what does that mean being adaptive? Adapt to what? To the going trend. Can you actually identify the going trend and go with that to develop your strategy? A lot of time you can try, right? Going against the tide, the trend, whatever. You can try. And maybe sometimes you get lucky. But hey, we're talking about efficiency, right? That is Taoism teaching. And we'll continue further in the following sessions. Yeah. Okay. Until then, ciao.